Beast Wars episode 23, Law of the Jungle. I really like this episode. It was actually, the beginning is really amazing, honestly. Like, the whole episode is good, but the beginning was amazing because they actually threw in a very emotional element to the series that really hasn't shown up. Like, it's somewhat been hinted at, and it's like, oh, a lot of the episodes focus on, like, oh, this character is close to dying or could die from this, or we think they died and stuff like that. But this episode starts off with a pretty simple battle. It starts off with a normal battle. I believe it's Cheetor and Tigatron and Dinobot. So it's the three of them. Tigatron actually comes in a little bit later. So it's Cheetor and Dinobot dealing with three different Predacons. First off, Inferno gets a focus in this episode. Freaking amazing. Like, I love that freaking Transformer so much. He's crazy and he's powerful, and I can't help but love Inferno. Like, Inferno is so cool. Like, he's crazy. Like, he's seriously insane and really, really strong and huge. Like, he's ginormous. It's crazy. So I love when he gets a focus, and he got a pretty big focus in this episode. So that in itself was really amazing. He was kind of like the big villain for the episode, but it was the three flyers, of course. So Pterosaur and Waspinator had their thing, and then Inferno was in there as well. So with it being the three of them, they were able to take on Dinobot and Cheetor. So they're kind of beating them up, and then Tigatron comes in, but it starts off where Waspinator sees a white tiger, and it's not actually Tigatron. He's like, oh, it's Tigerbot, and then the tiger kind of jumps up at him a little, and I was like, what is Tigatron doing? And then Waspinator looks up to a different part of this mountain, and he actually sees Tigatron, and Tigatron's like, you're half right. And I was like, oh, that makes sense now. So he jumps on Waspinator, and, he crashes him into the ground, and then Tigatron comes in to help Dinobot and Cheetor with Pterosaur and Inferno. And the big thing with this episode, or at least this first battle, is that they kind of have this big stockpile of weapons. They're almost like dropping nukes on them. And so, like, they're like these red balls, and they hit the ground and open up, and then a bunch of missiles start just shooting out in a bunch of different directions. And that's kind of how they were defeating them, because it was really sporadic. Like, Inferno was already shooting at them, and then Pterosaur would, like, drop one of these little bombs, and then a bunch of little missiles would start shooting out. So it was hard for them to battle, because it's like, man, we got to deal with him flying around. He's already tough enough. And then Pterosaur's dropping bombs that drop missiles. So they were kind of getting beat up a little bit, but they were kind of holding their own. And then Tigatron came in. He got rid of Waspinator, and he was able to help them take out both Pterosaur and Inferno. With Inferno, he was being the real problem because they kind of beat up Pterosaur, and Waspinator was being real stupid in this episode because Waspinator was like, "Oh, Pterosaur didn't say the signal and stuff," so Inferno was supposed to wait to attack, but he like lunged in at him, and that was how the battle started. And then Pterosaur goes in to back him up, but Waspinator stayed behind. He's like, I'll wait for the signal. And then Pterosaur gets like flown into a cliffside, and he's like, what are you doing? Like, fight. And he's like, I didn't get the signal. And he's like, attack, you imbecile. And he's like, there it is. And so he actually and then he finally ends up going to fight him. So they probably could have done a lot better if he just went and helped instead of waiting for a Pterosaur. But that's how it all played out. It was actually pretty funny. But they start to get beat up, and then once Tigatron comes in, he's shooting up Inferno. Like, he's just hitting him and hitting him, and then his like final blast misses. And I thought what was gonna happen was gonna be like this crazy cool shot where Inferno was gonna be like flying out of control, and he would like fly, because the shot went way past him, and every other shot hit him, and he got sent flying with the last blast. So I thought he was going to be like flying around out of control, and he'd fly into the final blast, and it like knock him down, and it would just look really cool. But instead, the final blast actually flew up towards the top of the mountain, and it hit that weapons cache that they had, which was a ton of explosives, and it blew up the mountain, and it killed the white tiger that was in that episode. And I believe this is the same white tiger from the very first episode that Tigatron showed up in, and he named it, I forgot what he called it. It was like Snow Trapper, I believe was the name. And this white tiger died because he was shooting at Inferno, and this final blast hit their cache, and it destroyed the mountain, and all those rocks crushed that white tiger. So it was a pretty insane start. I was like, this is going to destroy Tigatron, and it kind of did, because after that happened, he was like, I'm done with the Beast Wars. Like, I'm not going to be a part of this anymore because it's just gonna destroy the planet. And Dinobot was trying to talk to him. He's like, because Tigatron is talking to Cheetor, and he's like, a civilian was hurt this time. A civilian was actually killed. And Dinobot comes in, with his sort of warrior's code and all that stuff. He's like, there are no civilians. This is war, and this isn't just some beautiful land. This is merely a battlefield and stuff. And Tigatron was mad. He's like, because we made it that way. And Dinobot was trying to tell him, like, not really. Like the Predacons did. Like we're at war. This is how it's gonna be. And Tigatron just wasn't having that crap. And then Inferno actually kind of comes back into the battle because Inferno was trying to convince Pterosaur and Waspinator, we failed once. We can't go back to Megatron, so we need to, kind of rally together and go in and attack them again. So, they actually do that, and Inferno ends up actually, like, he actually changes his gun to, like, a flamethrower setting, I guess, in this episode, and he actually ends up setting a tree on fire, and Tigatron ends up kind of sending him away the second time, and he's like, see, this is what happens when we fight. The world suffers. And apparently he's always had this, but he basically just shot, like, some fire extinguisher spray out and, stopped the tree from being completely burnt up. I was like, oh, didn't see that coming. But he's like, this is why I can't be a part of the Beast Wars anymore. And so they have this whole issue, and, they have to contact Optimus and stuff like, hey, we've had a huge issue. You need to, kind of get out here. So he's flying out to them as Tigatron takes off, and Dinobot's like, Predacons know how to deal with someone who won't fight, and he tells Cheetor, like, you go back to base because you need to heal, because his arm was messed up. So Dinobot goes to follow Tigatron, and Cheetor sees that Optimus is flying overhead, or at least getting closer to them, so he's like, things will be fine, like, Dinobot isn't going to screw things up with Tigatron, and Optimus will stop all that. So he takes off, and then Dinobot and Tigatron have a little bit of a conversation, and he's like, Dinobot tries to tell him, like, this truly is war. Like, this is not because we brought the war to this planet. This is because the Predacons will continue to fight in this war. And Tigatron tell him, like, no one, there won't be a war, or there will continue to be a war until someone finally decides that they don't want to be a part of it. And Dinobot's like, the Predacons won't let you not be a part of it. Like, the Predacons won't accept just no battles. Like, it will continue no matter what. And Tigatron won't hear it, and so they're kind of just on opposite sides of things. And, Dinobot tries to tell him, like, hey, look over there. And so they're like these deer, and then here comes another tiger, like a regular looking tiger, and it eats basically like the adult deer, and the child escapes. And he's like, see, that is nature, like, that is war, that's what happens. And Tigatron changes it, and he's like, well, they hunt to survive, we're just fighting, just to fight. And Dinobot tries to tell him, like, that's not what's happening. So I like the conversation that they had where they're on these, they're talking about the same thing, but they just see two different sides of it, where Tigatron really just wants to protect the planet, and he doesn't want to fight because it costs innocent lives. And I love that. I was like, this is a really cool thing. And Dinobot was mad. He was like, fine, but then he kind of switched and was like, he was walking away at first. And I was like, oh, this is actually very mature Dinobot. And then he snarled and got real mad, and then he transformed and he was about to fight him again. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what I was expecting right there. But Optimus comes down, he tells them to cool off, and so Dinobot, takes off. He's like, you have to have something to say because Tigatron doesn't want to fight. And the first thing Optimus says is like, I'm sorry you lost your friend. And that kind of made Dinobot mad. He's like, oh, sentimentalities and stuff. I don't know why I even bother with you guys. And so he leaves, and Optimus and Tigatron have a bit of a conversation. And as that happens, Dinobot ends up getting caught because Inferno, Pterosaur, and I was going to say Rat Trap, but Waspinator see him, and it's like, it's the three of us and it's one of him. We can at least have this victory over Megatron. So it's like, or not over Megatron, but for Megatron. So it's like, they go in, they try to capture Dinobot, who would be like the greatest, or like the second greatest prize outside of flat out destroying Optimus. So they go after him, they knock him down, he gets beat up. Optimus and Tigatron are like, oh, Dinobot might be in trouble. And Tigatron doesn't say anything, and he's like, well, Optimus is like, well, I guess you've made your decision. So he takes off to go save Dinobot, and he can't win because it's it's 3-on-1. So he fights a little bit. He gets knocked down. He ends up falling right next to Dinobot, and they both have to go into their beast mode because they've been maximized for a bit too long. And so, of course, they're about to get destroyed. And then Tigatron comes in, and he takes him out. Like, he beats him up and stuff. And that's pretty much how it goes. Like, he beats him up, and it's an unfortunate situation where he decides, as much as this sucks, as long as the Predacons are here, we as Maximals have to be here to try to protect the planet. Because, and this is another thing Dinobot mentioned, like, if we don't stop them here, they'll destroy way more planets than the one that we're on. Like, if Megatron is able to successfully siphon the energon deposits on this planet, he'll wage a war that no one can stop. It'll destroy Cybertron and a ton of other planets that we don't even know about. And he felt Tigatron's view was too limited to just the planet that they were on. He's like, we have to fight. Like, this is war. If we don't stop them, it'll expand way beyond just destroying, one white tiger here or burning one tree there. It'll be everything and everyone. So, it was a really cool episode about ideals and, just personal struggle and the connection that Tigatron has to nature, because that was a big focus, like I mentioned in the episode with the island in the cloud. That was a big thing as well. He really wanted to save that island because it's like it was its own little ecosystem and oasis, and that's who he is. That's his character. Is he is the nature lover, and he is in beast mode more than he's maximized. So it was a really great episode for Tigatron to have these emotions and go through these really difficult things, and I really love getting to see that. And Dinobot trying to tell him, as crappy as it is, this is kind of just the way it has to be. Like, we have to face these really crappy situations in order to stop even worse situations. Like, it seems in the moment, it doesn't seem like it could possibly be worse because if a friend dies or an entire mountain is destroyed and the land becomes like a barren wasteland now because it's been like hit with a nuke pretty much. But that's just one small step. If we don't continue this war, as much as war sucks, we have to continue it because the Predacons will destroy everything if we don't stop them here. So it was a really good episode about sort of the inner turmoil of a character and his loss and how that affects him as a transformer and how that affects him as a part of the Beast Wars and all this other stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, the beginning was amazing because I did not expect that to happen, where the final blast actually destroyed the mountain or anything like that. So crazy opening, and an actual character did die. It wasn't one that we even knew about, but it was still a life, and it was actually destroyed. It was like, man, that actually does have an impact. That is seriously the first death in the series. So it still actually had an impact, even though it was the character that's like, oh, it's just that white tiger that Tigatron is hanging out with in some of the episodes. It still had a really big impact. I was like, man, that actually works, and they played out really well. So guys, I really enjoyed this episode. A nice serious, sort of subtle episode about just ideals and the inner struggles of a character, and Dinobot's ideals and how he sees this battle versus how Tigatron sees it. And it was just really fun. It was a really good episode. Of course, villain-wise, Inferno being like the main aspect of it, just with all of his craziness. Very awesome to see. Visual designs on him are just great. I don't know. I'm just in love with that character now. I don't know why I never remembered it. I don't know if I just didn't care when I was younger, but man, Inferno now is just super awesome to me. Like, he's just crazy, and he's strong too. So it's just awesome. He's like the evil version, at this point at least. He's almost the evil version of Dinobot, where he's just crazy and just kind of fights and just goes nuts and doesn't really listen to anything. That's kind of how he is at this point. But that's awesome as far as I'm concerned. But really fun episode. Of course, if you guys have any comments about it or Transformers in general, please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.